It's been almost a month.
It'll be 4 weeks and like 3 days.
Yeah.
If you're using the 13th.
Like, it's just that thing of time passing. A month feels like a lot should have happened.
Yeah, not if you're not doing anything, I guess.
And I guess a lot has happened. It's just been the same.
What's happened? What do you mean a lot happened?
Well, like, meaning...
Personally or in the world?
Right, exactly. Like, in the world, a lot has happened.
Yes. A hell of a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I've really matured, as we were talking about yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, too. You're looking a bit quarantined.
I'm feeling a bit, what is it? You know, brave?
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling a bit that, like, shaggy.
Yeah, I want you to let your hair
be.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know, just however it is.
This is pretty much how it is.
Pretty much.
Yeah, like I smoothed out the top a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like smoothed out.
But just the top.
But the top also.
I think you saw me with it.
I don't know, okay? I don't remember.
It's pretty much it. It used to be a lot curlier when it was shorter, I guess.
Huh.
Now this is wavy, right?
Yeah, but like look at that piece that's in there somewhere.
Are you sure?
No, this one.
Yeah. Oh. A coil.
Yeah. I want it all to be like that.
Like, I probably could have that if I did the thing, if I did curly hair care, and the girls put the curl mousse, and then they dry it with the diffuser and all that business.
I like it.
I don't know if
I like the diffuser.
Right, you use that.
Yeah, I use both, but...
That tool is probably the only tool I've ever bought that I'm like, this is worth it. This is well made.
The diffuser?
No, the Harry Josh hair dryer.
I want to say the diffuser broke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But maybe I can like sleep a little bit or something.
It broke?
Yeah.
That sucks. Okay. Never mind then.
But that was a separate attachment, you know?
Right. But the attachments matter.
Yeah. But maybe the like main thing is still really well made.
Hair dryers are so funny. Have you seen the Dyson hair dryer?
Yes.
Have you ever tried it? Apparently it's not good either.
You told me it was apparently not good.
Yeah, because I watched a lot of reviews before. Okay, I do my research. Because I gotta know. Yeah, apparently it's not good. Your hair feels like crispy afterwards. It's not worth it. And it's $400. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dyson charges unbelievable amounts for their vacuums.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a Mercedes. It's like a completely different league of. It's not even close to where the other companies are. Yeah.
How do they get away with it? Because it's Dyson.
I don't know. My freaking dad's house is full of them things.
Really?
My sister, I think, has one. Yeah. I think they work well.
So they also have this, I guess I would call it a curling iron.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't recall, but...
It's kind of like a curling iron. Except I think there's different... It's basically a vacuum for your hair. You wrap the hair around it and it goes like... And then you take it out.
I can't picture it.
I'll find it for you.
Yes, please.
I think that maybe it's gone down, but that was like $600.
Whoo! Hey!
And
Whoo!
Air wrap, is that what it's called? Air wrap complete set. Anyway, wraps your hair in air.
Wraps your hair in air.
A curler without heat.
Oh. Well, that would be kind of worth it.
I mean,
like at least there's an argument there for it being extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah, you start with like damp towel dried hair, and then so it like dries it as you go. But $550.
But with no heat.
No heat, true. So like not damaging it. I get that.
I mean, that's pretty like, unless you're trying to use curlers, that's pretty revolutionary.
Revolutionary.
Yeah, clearly I'm jumping on the Dyson.
You're like, yes, it's worth it. Let's get it.
As we speak. Literally right now. I am climbing aboard. Oh,
mind blowing. How are you?
I'm a little fried.
Mm-hmm.
A little fried. A little sauteed.
Yeah.
A little marinated. A little griddle. What do you do on a griddle?
Make grits.
No, but like, I need a verb.
Griddles. I don't know. Fried.
Can you believe it's raining again in Los Angeles?
It's beautiful.
Is it?
It smells really nice out.
I feel slightly different about rain during the quarantine.
Yes, I was thinking that too. Because I don't know if this is true, but I was thinking that it would stir up all the germs in a different way. Is that true?
Where?
I don't know. Because it's like, wait, just stay with me. So if rain is like part of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
If. It's not like we have scientists who know these things.
Yeah.
So like all the like stuff in the air goes up into the clouds. Now the clouds are spitting down all of that on all of us. That's what I was hypothesizing.
I don't think germs evaporate.
No. They're airborne. I don't know. Okay. Maybe this is sounding stupid. Maybe.
If this sounds stupid,
yeah,
then yeah, I don't.
Wouldn't it like stir up and displace? Like the reason everything smells so good, right, is because it like infuses like it's like stirring it. That's what I think of it doing.
I don't know if it's, I mean, I get what you're saying about stirring. I think that's like one of the things that happens to like smells, for example.
Yeah.
However, I think it also like might be washing stuff. Like if we're getting abstract with how
so
the rain.
Positive about it. Okay.
Well, if we're getting abstract with how the rain could possibly be affecting the coronavirus, which frankly I don't know that it is in any way. But
let's start this.
Let's stipulate that something's happening.
Okay.
And just try to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
I would say that it's almost just as likely that it like rinses off a bunch of surfaces that the thing is on.
I'm glad you went to the opposite place.
I mean, I'm still sitting in the same fucking chair, aren't I?
So you're grateful for the rain, though?
No.
Oh. Great.
No, I'm theoretically grateful for the rain, like all the plants and the climate and the city and the everything. Yes, I'm glad it's raining.
It is kind of funny that I find that this is the most beautiful time to be in Los Angeles.
What is the most
spring
beautiful?
right now. This season right now. Yeah, everything's green. This city is so floral. There's so many plants, so many things that you don't see in Eastern North America. When I first came here, I couldn't believe the colors that existed out here. And especially right now, that's when everything blooms. And it's beautiful. And there's something really sad about the fact that we're missing it.
But the fact that it's raining a lot now does bode well for all of those things, like in the next few weeks. Like the times that we've gotten rain unexpectedly and stuff, I remember driving to like Calabasas or whatever. And all of the hills that you normally, that look like this normally, was suddenly like vivid, just bright green. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So rain has a really positive effect on those things that you like.
Yeah. You know you can't go hiking anymore?
You can't?
No, you cannot. They closed them, blocked them all off.
That's cool.
Maybe there's some hiking paths that are still open, but yeah.
That's sad.
Mm-hmm.
Ray's been going to the stairs, the Santa Monica stairs.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm surprised that it's not like, I don't know how you would, as a law enforcement person, like break that up, because it's not even, it's not in a park, for example.
Right. It's just public. But I would think you still could.
Yeah.
You just put tape. Yeah.
Have you made a mask yet?
I haven't.
Have you watched a video about making masks?
Yes, I have. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to use? Got some old t-shirts. We got elastic bands.
Hair things.
Or hair ties. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway.
There's just this one bird going batshit.
Yeah. So happy all day, all night.
There's not like a lot of other bird sounds.
Is it the same bird? Do you hear him too from your bedroom?
I don't know. No. I think I hear birds.
Birds, okay.
But you hear specifically one?
Yeah.
Just one?
Yeah, I think so. So happy. But now that sounds like from over there. There's one that I hear from my bedroom all the time.
I am hearing it from there, but I am notoriously bad at telling where sound is coming from. Mm-hmm. It's broken in my head. So if I think it's coming from there, which I surely do, it's probably coming from there. What is that? Being able to tell where sound is coming from?
That is, what would we call that? It's not spatial awareness. It's like audio awareness.
But it's a very specific element of audio awareness, because it's not like I can't hear the thing. It's just coming from different places. Like I have good hearing.
Yeah. You can't tell from where it's coming from.
But the one thing that I'm just consistently wrong about is where I think sound is coming from. Like it feels to me like it's just completely broken.
I don't know what accounts for that. I don't know what controls that.
One of the casualties of my
because it's also one of those
history
things where like the sound. Oh yeah,
Maybe.
Did you break your eardrums standing too close to a speaker?
No, I'm saying my body
That
is
was an additional. Yeah.
all kinds of, I'm sure, weird.
I mean, I was going to say that it's one of those things where, like, you get a message of sound and then your brain interprets it as sound.
Yeah. Yes.
So something in the translation that happens for you where the direction gets lost. That's
Super nuts.
Did you know that apparently if you look at yourself in the mirror, it will always appear like your eyes are not moving? And that's something our brain does. I don't know why, but it like omits the eye movement for
What
ourselves.
kind of movement?
Like, you know, if you move your eyes.
But when you move your eyes, you're looking elsewhere.
I don't know.
When you move your eyes, you literally can't
But
track
if you
it.
like, yeah, exactly. But you can't ever see your eyes moving.
That's because you can't see your eyes.
What?
That's because you can't see. You can only see what you're looking at. You can only see what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Therefore, when you say
You can't see your seeing. Like, you can't see your...
like when you say you can't see your eyes moving,
Yeah.
if your eyes are moving, that means what you're looking at is moving.
Yeah.
Which means you really can't track much of anything if you're not continually watching it.
Yes. You're like, this is so obvious.
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm just having a really hard time saying it.
Like, it's actually a phenomenon. It's called saccadic, I think, masking. And as our eyes move, there's a blurring of the image on the retina. To counteract this, so that the image stays clear and sharp, a part of the brain believed to be the cortex cuts off the processing of images. What happens is that we momentarily go blind as the visual information is no longer going to the brain, therefore stopping the blur.
Anytime you look from anything to anything? Because that sounded very general. Like,
Yeah.
It's in between, like, if I look from the TV to you,
Yeah.
even if I go like that, I'm just like puttering out, like an old pickup at the side of the road, out of gas.
Yeah.
That's kind of good. That's what's happening. That's what's available. I can't believe one of my employers is from literally 10 years ago. That's so long.
Impressive.
That's so long ago.
Such a loyal employee.
Of this one payroll company. I just love them. I wonder how you decide what payroll company you're going to use.
The one that everyone else is in.
But there's like an interesting number of them. The union has a list of all of them.
Yeah.
And there's like 17 or like 15. It's not like 3 and it's not like 100. It's not like 3 and it's not like 50. Should I just stop talking?
Really? So it's like 12.
Yeah, which to me is interesting.
Oh.
Like those are the payroll companies for all of acting.
Yeah.
That's weird.
As opposed to there being like 2?
As opposed to there being like either 2 or like 40.
Huh.
Like either it's a market, like there's a bunch of them.
This makes it sound like, yeah. Like, oh, let's start you know what? Let's start a payroll company.
That is literally the last thing that I want to do ever. Oh my god. I would hate that.
I don't know.
I'd have to be fired. I'd have to fire myself immediately. That would be my first act if we started a payroll company. My first official act. As a payroll roller.
Payroller. I don't know. That's like, yeah, rolling in it. Yeah, it gives me appreciation for those accountants. You know, I assume accountants like their jobs. I assume there's a type of person who really enjoys that line of work.
I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah? What's going on there?
I don't know.
Like, yes, give me numbers.
I think
give
it's people,
me receipts.
I think it's people who like things to be concrete or have an appreciation for things that are concrete.
Okay. But like, I like concrete
control
things.
freaks.
I like control.
You don't like things. You don't like concrete.
No.
No! I bet you even these people know
Don't
that.
we all like concrete?
Yeah, but in a slightly smaller sense, like in a more discerning way.
I thought that like we're all essentially desperately trying to control things, and for some people, their way of combating a lack of control is to be like, whatever, no control. But that's still coming from a place of wanting control. Yeah.
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 But the fact that you're like, that's not very accountant. That's not, I need concrete. That's not like I enjoy interacting with things that are real.
Yeah, that's accurate.
You know?
Even when I did math, it was kind of like, yeah, so. Like I wasn't really paying it. I wasn't really in it.
You weren't in it to win it. That's why this happened.
Kept a distance.
You kept a distance from math.
Yeah. I think that was really good for our relationship too.
Did it make your hearts grow fonder?
I mean, like, I was good at math.
Was it good at you?
Was it good at me?
See?
I don't know what that means.
Of course I don't.
Do you heart me?
I don't either.
I guess not.
You're talking about your relationship
with
math. That's why I...
Yeah, I know, I get it. I don't know. We'd have to ask math.
You know, I thought it took me a really long time to say math as opposed to maths.
I like maths better. I like anything that sounds more British. I like saying, let's go to hospital.
Let's go to hospital?
Yeah. Like, I don't like saying that. Like, does this mean we get to go to hospital?
I didn't realize that they said that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound wrong to me, but it doesn't sound like the only thing you'd say either.
It's like church. Let's go to church. You don't say let's go to the church.
You could.
You could. You also could not.
It's day 20.
It's almost a month.
It's
Remember when people were like 2 weeks? 2 weeks and we got this thing.
It's like day 24.
Day 24.
It took me that long to calculate.
I think we're actually doing very well, considering.
What are the standards?
I'm imagining the standards are pretty low.
So
I'm
then,
imagining people have started. I don't know.
I'm amazed how
Just holding themselves late at night.
you're not doing that. People on Instagram are doing like really weird things out of boredom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What?
like what's her name? Just posted like I think we've run out of all the activities, and it's like it has her daughter putting makeup on her brothers, like doing full makeup.
Mm-hmm. People are doing that before them.
I mean, I don't know if they were.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't seem like they were
Mm-hmm.
doing that before. Yes, people have put on makeup.
And don't just be people.
Who do you mean?
I got one Instagram thing.
Yeah.
Did you have any of this? So people were like posting embarrassing photos of themselves.
The Until Tomorrow thing?
Yes.
I got it from 3 people.
Yeah, did you do it?
No.
I know, right? I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't care.
And frankly, it's not because I don't want to post an embarrassing picture. It's because there's no universe in which I'm going to chase up people to be like, you have to do this.
Yeah.
I'm not, no.
Yeah.
But, like Will did it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think he just stopped. Like he posted it. He did the posting of the picture, but he didn't like chase people up about it. What's weird to me is that like normally those chain things, like you just ignore them, but people are not ignoring it.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed. Did you have to like? Oh, but I gotta do it.
I mean, I did wonder if it was gonna be interpreted as an antisocial gesture. Like Allie was one of the people.
Oh yeah, okay.
Not Allie, not Yoga Allie. Other Allie who was here.
Oh yeah.
She was like, I'm so sorry, but I was like, you're clearly not that sorry.
Right. You know, they're like, don't break the chain. Yeah, that guilt got to me.
But why?
Oh, so true.
Also, I didn't appreciate the fact that the 3 people that I've seen do it, their pictures are not embarrassing.
No, I know.
I was like, this is like I have embarrassing pictures.
I think the trick with it is to find a photo that you could claim was embarrassing, but is also kind of
Like Allie's was like her asleep with her dog in the bed, and she had like an eye mask on, and her mouth's like a little bit open.
It's cute.
It's like.
Mm-hmm.
What's is like him falling asleep in like a limo. I was like,
wow.
I don't. He's like in a tux and it's like, what's? I was like, why are you and Allie so embarrassed about sleeping?
Ugh. I want people to know.
Someone else's, Maureen's was like, oh, wearing a sheet mask.
Okay.
Is that embarrassing?
I just post that every day.
I feel like you do. Why are we wearing sheet masks?
I don't know.
Do you think we should? No.
Then we gotta take it off. We gotta set a timer. Maybe tomorrow.
How like specific are you about this?
Very specific.
You set a timer?
Yeah, because you don't want to. We're talking sheet mask. No, it doesn't matter. Mask. This applies too. Like you do want to pay attention to the amount of time you leave it on.
A sheet mask.
Because you leave it on too long and it actually starts to dry out the moisture in your face.
Actually, I've heard that before. We could put them on, start, And then when we feel like maybe we're about to consider thinking about reading, we could take it off and still have like 40 minutes to talk.
Wait, okay. So you just say, let's do it, and let's set a timer.
No, I was still thinking like tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay. Okay, let's do it tomorrow.
But I also said we were gonna like stream on Instagram. Like I said, a lot of things were gonna happen tomorrow, and I haven't got the map. Have you got it?
The map?
Yeah, the map that I promised like 2 days ago.
Yeah, where is that?
Where did it get to? Where has it got to?
I don't know.
I don't see it.
It's here somewhere. I mean,
so we will persist in ignorance. Huh?
It's been a stressful day.
Was yesterday a stressful day?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was.
There's been priorities.
You're right.
That's
you guys
good.
are not our priority. It's basically.
Hey, we've been here.
Yes.
Yeah. We're consistent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that's the number one thing.
That is the thing.
Like if we were raising children right now through YouTube, at least we would be there every night.
Oh, like if they were the
tuck
children.
them in.
All right.
Yeah.
And promise them things for tomorrow.
Oh.
And then you're like, shh.
Of course not.
Night. That's how my mother was. Yeah. Well, she promised me things. My mom's great. I'm super over it. I'm really over it.
What did we read yesterday?
Rostov. Oh, The Hunt.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my God. The Fugly Hunt.
Yeah, they caught a wolf live.
And it was horrendous.
It's pretty rough. I had no idea the to-do that went into hunting. 120 hounds?
I think it was more than that.
That's a lot of dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a lot.
I don't know how much a wolf could stand a chance against that number of dogs.
I'm thinking not at all.
Not to mention hunters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently that's how people used to hunt. And the Rostovs are really hard up, but also have all of this at their disposal.
Yeah. They have like a hunting establishment. Which at first I was like, oh, maybe it's a money-making venture. No, it's not.
No, it's just sport.
It's just another.
It's like they're going out on the lawn to play croquet.
Exactly.
They're going out to catch live animals.
And kill them.
Yeah. Also, I feel like we're being set up to really feel sorry for Ilya Rostov.
Are we?
But then, that's what I have felt like up to this point. But then this portrait we had of him where he's just like drunk on a horse, enjoying the chase. I don't know. It's kind of like, great. Very privileged.
I think there was still that moment where everyone like is like, "You are a fucking idiot," to him, and he's like,
"What? That's just it." I kind of think it's a bit of a dolt.
Yeah, but are those mutually exclusive? Feel bad for him, and he's a dolt.
No, you're right. I guess
that's kind of one of the reasons that I thought he was going to die, because I was like, we are like talking did this to him an awful lot. Yeah, the hunt was very, very off-putting to me. Did anything else even happen?
No.
Nicholas came home.
Oh, had that not happened yet?
I don't think so. Because we'd ended on Mary.
Oh, okay. So Nicholas is home, and he found out about Natasha's marriage.
He was very resistant to come home because apparently home is stupid.
Yeah, and he really just thrives at war. Even though it sounds like they're doing nothing at war.
Yeah, they're like going out and stuff.
Oh!
I was like, that's a random comment, and then I remembered that 20 minutes ago we talked about foliage.
Foliage!
Colored foliage. I saw a picture of it, of the Japanese maple. It looks beautiful. Mr. B. My mother showed me.
It already has red leaves,
Mm.
so it doesn't turn in the fall.
I guess not. Oh. I don't really know about their internal clocks. It's pretty cute that they all have internal clocks. So yeah, we are at the end of this horrendous hunt.
Yeah, hopefully that's over. We don't have to do any more.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised to hear that she that the hikes were closed here, because I knew that you had been walking.
Oh, they can. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I'm not fond of Nicholas. No, are you?
I feel like we're supposed to feel like the Rostovs are like this darling, wholesome family, like the heart of the book. There's a like Mr. Cratchit feeling. I'm not sure.
They're not malicious.
No, like I think they're very sweet, if a bit ignorant and blind.
Yeah.
And they really love each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is not nothing.
That's true.
So maybe that's enough to be the heart of the book. I don't know.
Yeah, but I hope we're done with the hunt.
Yeah.
Although, so what happened with the wolf at the end? Was it still alive?
Yes.
Yeah.
They gagged her and put her on a horse, and people were like touching her, and she was just like, I don't know in what mental state. And they had like killed a couple of her cubs, I want to say.
I think.
Yeah.
Blank that out.
You might have. It was towards the end.
Okay, I blanked that out. It was too much for me.
When they were like loading her up.
Yeah.
That is not my bed.
No?
Yeah. Okay, so
What's
we're
your
at chapter
sister?
6. That's my sister from the basement.
Chapter 6, book 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The old count went home, and Natasha and Petya promised to return very soon. But it was still early. But as it was still early, the hunt went farther.
Great.
At midday, they put the hounds into... They caught the wolf. What else do you want? At midday, they
They
put
have
the
to
hounds...
justify the 700 people that are out there.
Right. They put the hounds into a ravine thickly overgrown with young trees. Nicholas, standing in a fallow field, could see all his wits.
Facing him lay a field of winter rye. There, his own huntsman stood alone in a hollow behind a hazel bush. The hounds had scarcely been loosed before Nicholas heard one he knew, Voltorn. Voltorn. What a name.
Sounds like a Pokemon.
I'm too old.
Okay.
Giving tongue at intervals. I also am not fond of that phrase.
Giving tongue?
Yeah. It's a little graphic.
Okay.
Other hounds joined in, now pausing and now again giving tongue. A moment later, he heard a cry from the wooded ravine that a fox had been found, and the whole pack, joining together, rushed along the ravine toward the rye field and away from Nicholas.
He saw the whips and their red caps galloping along the edge of the ravine. He even saw the hounds, and was expecting a fox to show itself at any moment on the rye field opposite.
The huntsman standing in the hollow moved and loosed his borzoi. And Nicholas saw a queer, short-legged red fox with a fine brush going hard across the field. The bourgeois bore down on it. Now they drew close to the fox, which began to dodge between the field in sharper and sharper curves, trailing its brush, when suddenly a strange white borzoi dashed in, followed by a black one, and everything was in confusion. The bourgeois formed a star-shaped figure, scarcely swaying their bodies and with tails turned away from the center of the group. I can't imagine that. What does that look like?
Repeat it.
The dogs formed a star-shaped figure, scarcely swaying their bodies and with tails turned away from the center of the group. Like they're all in one big star.
Yeah, this sounds like synchronized swimming.
I'm sure they could do it.
Wait. Oh, I had it for a second. I wanted to show you a borzoi.
Is that how you say it?
I think it's borzoi because
Borzois.
I don't think it's French. I think it's Russian.
Borzoi.
Borzoi. Look, it's that.
All those strange looking things.
Yeah.
Show for the people.
Short. We got 100 of those.
140 or so.
Oh, excuse me.
Plus the 5 from Uncle.
Yeah. It literally means fast.
They look fast.
Mm-hmm.
That one needs a bit of a trim. If
he's been in quarantine for a while. 24 days.
Okay, 2 huntsmen galloped up to the dogs, one in a red cap, the other a stranger in a green coat.
What's this? Thought Nicholas. Where's that huntsman from? He is not Uncle's man.
The huntsman got the fox, but stayed there a long time without strapping it to the saddle. Their horses, bridled and with high saddles, stood near them, and there too the dogs were lying. The huntsmen waved their arms and did something to the fox. Then, from that spot came the sound of a horn with the signal agreed on in case of a fight.
That Illigan's huntsman, Illigan? Okay. That's Illigan's huntsman, having a row with our Ivan, said Nicholas's groom.
Nicholas sent the man to call Natasha and Petya to him and rode at a foot-pace to the place where the whips were getting the hounds together. Several of the field galloped to the spot where the fight was going on.
Nicholas dismounted and with Natasha and Petya, who had ridden up, stopped near the hounds, waiting to see how the matter would end. Out of the bushes came the huntsman who had been fighting and rode toward his young master, with the fox tied to his crupper. While still at a distance, he took off his cap and tried to speak respectfully, but he was pale and breathless, and his face was angry. One of his eyes was black, but he probably was not even aware of it.
What has happened? Asked Nicholas.
A likely thing, killing a fox our dogs had hunted, and it was my gray bitch that caught it. Go to law indeed. He snatches at the fox. I gave him one with the fox. Here it is on my saddle. Do you want a taste of this? Said the huntsman, pointing to his dagger, and probably imagining himself still speaking to his foe.
Nicholas, not stopping to talk to the man, asked his sister and Petya to wait for him and rode to the spot where the enemy's, Illigan's, hunting party was.
The victorious huntsman rode off to join the field, and there, surrounded by inquiring sympathizers, recounted his exploits. The
facts were that Illigan, with whom the Rostovs had a quarrel and were at law, hunted over places that belonged by custom to the Rostovs, and had now, as if purposely, sent his men to the very woods the Rostovs were hunting, and let his man snatch a fox their dogs had chased. Nicholas, though he had never seen Illigan, with his usual absence of moderation and judgment, hated him cordially from reports of his arbitrariness and violence, and regarded him as his bitterest foe.
He rode in angry agitation toward him, firmly grasping his whip and fully prepared to take the most resolute and desperate steps to punish his enemy.
So Nicholas was just described as having a customary absence of moderation in judgment.
Huh, strange.
So he's just like got no idea of how serious something is or isn't.
Yeah.
That's really scary, actually.
I mean, that's everything we have seen.
I mean, I remember the thing with the banker, but oh, right, his
His
gambling.
usual absence of moderation and judgment. He's like, oh, everything's gonna be free.
Hardly had he passed an angle of the wood before a stout gentleman in a beaver cap came riding toward him on a handsome raven black horse, accompanied by 2 hunt servants.
Instead of an enemy, Nicholas found in Illigan a stately and courteous gentleman who was particularly anxious to make the young count's acquaintance. Having ridden up to Nicholas, Illigan raised his beaver cap and said he much regretted what had occurred and would have the man punished who had allowed himself to seize a fox hunted by someone else's borzois. He hoped to become better acquainted with the count and invited him to draw his covert.
Natasha, afraid that her brother would do something dreadful, had followed him in some excitement. Seeing the enemies exchanging friendly greetings, she rode up to them. Illigan lifted his beaver cap still higher to Natasha and said, with a pleasant smile, that the young countess resembled Diana in her passion for the chase as well as in her beauty, of which he had heard much.
To expiate his huntsman's offense, Illigan pressed the Rostovs to come to an upland of his about a mile away, which he usually kept for himself, in which, he said, swarmed with hares. Nicholas agreed, and the hunt, now doubled, moved on.
The way to Illigan's upland was across the fields. The hunt servants fell into line. The masters rode together. Uncle, Rostov, and Illigan kept stealthily glancing at one another's dogs, trying not to be observed by their companions and searching uneasily for rivals to their own borzois.
Rostov was particularly struck by the beauty of a small, purebred, red-spotted bitch on Illigan's leash. Slender, but with muscles like steel, a delicate muzzle, and prominent black eyes. He had heard of the swiftness of Illigan's borzois, and in that beautiful bitch saw a rival to his own Milka.
In the middle of a sober conversation begun by Illigan about the year's harvest, Nicholas pointed to the red-spotted bitch.
Fine little bitch, that, said he in a careless tone. Is she swift?
That one? Yes, she's a good dog. Guess what she's after, answered Illigan indifferently, of the red-spotted bitch Urza, for which, a year before, he had given a neighbor 3 families of house serfs. Good Lord.
Ooh.
So, in your parts, too, the harvest is nothing to boast of, Count? He went on, continuing the conversation they had begun. And considering it polite to return the young man's compliment, Illigan looked at his borzois and picked out Milka, who attracted his attention by her breath. That black-spotted one of yours is fine, well-shaped, said he.
Yeah, she's fast enough, replied Nicholas, and thought, if only a full-grown hare would cross the field now, I'd show you what sort of borzoi she is. And turning to his groom, he said he would give a ruble to anyone who found a hare.
I don't understand, continued Illigan, how some sportsmen can be so jealous about game and dogs. For myself, I can tell you, Count, I enjoy riding in company such as this. What could be better? He again raised his cap to Natasha. But as for counting skins and what one takes, I don't care about that.
Oh, of course not.
Or being upset because someone else's borzoi and not mine is catching something. All I care about is to enjoy seeing the chase. Is it not so, Count? For I consider that...
Atu! Came the long-drawn cry of one of the borzoi whippers in, who had halted. He stood on a knoll in the stubble, holding his whip aloft, and again repeated his long-drawn cry, Atu! This call in the uplifted whip meant that he saw a sitting hare.
Ah, he has found one, I think, said Illigan carelessly. Yes, we must ride up. Shall we both course it? Answered Nicholas, seeing in Urza and Uncle's red rugai. Okay, I don't know. 2 rivals he had never yet had a chance of pitting against his own borzois. And suppose they outdo my Milka at once, he thought as he rode with Uncle and Illigan towards the hare.
A full-grown one? Asked Illigan as he approached the whip who had sighted the hare. Now without agitation he looked round and whistled to Urza.
And you, Michael Nikanorovich, he said, addressing Uncle. Thank you.
The latter was riding with a sullen expression on his face.
How can I join in? Why, you've given a village for each of your borzois. That's it. Come on. Yours are worth thousands. Try yours against one another, you two, and I'll look on.
Ruge, hey, he shouted. Rugayushka, he added involuntarily by this diminutive, expressing his affection and the hopes he placed on this red borzoi. Natasha saw and felt the agitation the two elderly men and her brother were trying to conceal, and was herself excited by it.
The huntsman stood halfway up the knoll, holding his whip, and the gentlefolk rode up to him at a foot pace. The hounds that were far off on the horizon turned away from the hare and the whips, but not the gentlefolk. What? Also moved away. Oh, okay. All were moving slowly and sedately. What is happening?
Okay. How is it pointing? Asked Nicholas, riding 100 paces toward the whip who had sighted the hare.
But before the whip could reply, the hare, scenting the frost coming next morning, but not the hundreds of people
just the
and
frost.
Dogs closing in on it.
I know. How are they sneaking up to anything?
I don't know, especially when they're like, oh, yeah. I don't know how Atu could possibly I feel like a hare would be like.
Right.
Yeah. But before the whip could reply, the hare, scenting the frost coming next morning, was unable to rest and leaped up. The pack on leash rushed downhill in full cry after the hare, and from all sides the borzois that were not on leash darted after the hounds and the hare. All the hunt who had been moving slowly shouted, "Stop!" calling in the hounds, while the borzoi whips, with a cry of "Atu!" galloped across the field, setting the borzois on the hare. The tranquil Illigan, Nicholas, Natasha, and Uncle flew, reckless of where and how they went, seeing only the borzois and the hare, and fearing only to lose sight even for an instant of the chase. The hare they had started was a strong and swift one. When he jumped up, he did not run at once, but pricked his ears, listening to the shouting and trampling that resounded from all sides at once. He took a dozen bounds, not very quickly, letting the borzois gain on him, and finally, having chosen his direction and realized his danger, laid back his ears and rushed off headlong. He had been lying in the stubble, but in front of him was the autumn sowing where the ground was soft. The two borzois of the huntsman, who had sighted him, having been the nearest, were the first to see and pursue him, but they had not gone far before Illigan's red-spotted Urza passed them, got within a length, flew at the hare with terrible swiftness, aiming at his scut, and thinking she had seized him, rolled over like a ball. The hare arched his back and bounded off yet more swiftly. From behind Urza rushed the broad-haunched, black-spotted Milka and began rapidly gaining on the hare.
"Malashka, dear!" rose Nicholas's triumphant cry. It looked as if Milka would immediately pounce on the hare, but she overtook him and flew past. The hare had squatted. Again, the beautiful Urza reached him, but when close to the hare's scut, paused as if measuring the distance, so as not to make a mistake this time, but seize his hind leg.
"Urza, darling!" Illigan wailed in a voice unlike his own. What is with them, wailing and being, dearest to their dogs?
Their dogs.
Sweetheart! Urza, darling! Illigan wailed in a voice unlike his own. Urza did not hearken to his appeal. At the very moment when she would have seized her prey, the hare moved and darted along the balk between the winter rye and the stubble. Again Urza and Milka were abreast, running like a pair of carriage horses, and began to overtake the hare, but it was easier for the hare to run on the balk, and the borzois did not overtake him so quickly.
"Rugayushka, that's it, come on!" came a third voice just then, and Uncle's red borzoi, straining and curving its back, caught up with the two foremost borzoi, pushed ahead of them regardless of the terrible strain, put on speed close to the hare, knocked it off the balk? How would you say?
Balk.
Okay. Onto the rye field, again put on speed still more viciously, sinking to his knees in the muddy field, and all one could see was how, muddying his back, he rolled over with the hare. A ring of borzois surrounded him. A moment later, everyone had drawn up round the crowd of dogs. Only the delighted uncle dismounted and cut off a pad, shaking the hare for the blood to drip off. and anxiously glancing round with restless eyes while his arms and legs twitched. He spoke without himself knowing whom to or what about. That's it. Come on, that's a dog. There, it has beaten them all, the 1,000 ruble as well as the 1 ruble borzois. That's it, come on, said he, panting and looking wrathfully around as if he were abusing someone, as if they were all his enemies and had insulted him, and only now had he at last succeeded in justifying himself. There are your 1,000 ruble ones, that's it, come on.
Rugai, here's a pad for you, he said, throwing down the hare's muddy pad. You've deserved it. That's it, come on.
She's tired herself out. She'd run it down 3 times by herself, said Nicholas, also not listening to anyone, regardless of whether he were heard or not.
What? But what is there in running across it like that, said Illigan's groom.
Once she had missed it and turned it away, any mongrel could take it, Illigan was saying at the same time.
Are they serious right now?
Breathless from his gallop and his excitement. At the same moment, Natasha, without drawing breath, screamed joyously, ecstatically, and so piercingly that it set everyone's ear tingling.
Jesus.
By that shriek, she expressed what the others expressed by all talking at once. And it was so strange that she must herself have been ashamed of so wild a cry, and everyone else would have been amazed at it at any other time. Uncle himself twisted up the hair, threw it neatly and smartly across his horse's back, as if by that gesture he meant to rebuke everybody, and, with an air of not wishing to speak to anyone, mounted his bay and rode off. The others all followed, dispirited and shamefaced, and only much later were they able to regain their former affectation of indifference. For a long time they continued to look at Red Rugai, who, his arched back spattered with mud and clanking the ring of his leash, walked along just behind Uncle's horse with the serene air of a conqueror.
Well, I am like any other dog as long as it's not a question of coursing, but when it is, then look out, his appearance seemed to Nicholas to be saying.
When much later Uncle rode up to Nicholas and began talking to him, he felt flattered that, after what had happened, Uncle deigned to speak to him. Well, great.
I'm so glad that we've been here for this.
Yeah, it was really good. Whose bitch was the best? Yep.
Stupid. Chapter 7. Toward evening, Illigan took leave of Nicholas, who found that they were so far from home that he accepted Uncle's offer that the hunting party should spend the night in his little village of Mikhailovna.
If you put up at my house, that would be better still. That's it, come on, said Uncle. You could see its damp weather, and you could rest, and the little countess could be driven home in a trap.
Uncle's offer was accepted. A huntsman was sent to Otradno for a trap, while Nicholas rode with Natasha and Petya to Uncle's house.
Some 5 male domestic serfs, big and little, rushed out to the front porch to meet their master. A score of women serfs, young and old and young, as well as children, popped out from the back entrance to have a look at the hunters who were arriving. The presence of Natasha, a woman, a lady, and on horseback, raised the curiosity of the serfs to such a degree that many of them came up to her, stared her in the face, and unabashed by her presence made remarks about her as though she were some prodigy on show, and not a human being able to hear or understand what was said about her.
Arinka, look, she sits sideways. There she sits and her skirt dangles. See? She's got a little hunting horn.
Goodness gracious, see her knife?
Isn't she a Tartar?
How is it you didn't go head over heels? Asked the boldest of all, addressing Natasha directly.
Uncle dismounted at the porch of his little wooden house, which stood in the midst of an overgrown garden, and after a glance at his retainers, shouted authoritatively that the superfluous ones should take themselves off, and that all necessary preparations should be made to receive the guests and the visitors.
The serfs all dispersed. Uncle lifted Natasha off her horse, and taking her hand, led her up the rickety wooden steps of the porch. The house, with its bare, unplastered log walls, was not over-clean. It did not seem that those living in it aimed at keeping it spotless, but neither was it noticeably neglected. In the entry, there was a smell of fresh apples, and wolf and fox skins hung about.
Uncle led the visitors through the anteroom into a small hall with a folding table and red chairs, then into the drawing room with a round birchwood table and a sofa, and finally into his private room, where there was a tattered sofa, a worn carpet, and portraits of Suvorov, of the host's father and mother, and of himself in military uniform. The study smelt strongly of tobacco and dogs. Uncle asked his visitors to sit down and make themselves at home, and then went out of the room. Ruge, his back still muddy, came into the room and lay down on the sofa, cleaning himself with his tongue and teeth. Leading from the study was a passage in which a partition with ragged curtains could be seen. From behind this came women's laughter and whispers. Natasha, Nicholas, and Petya took off their wraps and sat down on the sofa. Petya, leaning on his elbow, fell asleep at once. Natasha and Nicholas were silent. Their faces glowed. They were hungry and very cheerful. They looked at one another now that the hunt was over and they were in the house. Nicholas no longer considered it necessary to show his manly superiority over his sister. Natasha gave him a wink, and neither refrained long from bursting into a peal of ringing laughter even before they had a pretext ready to account for it.
After a while, Uncle came in a caustic coat, blue trousers, and small top boots. And Natasha felt that this costume, the very one she regarded with surprise and amusement at Oshrodno, was just the right thing, and not at all worse than a swallowtail or frock coat. Uncle, too, was in high spirits, and far from being offended by the brothers' and sisters' laughter, it could never enter his head that they might be laughing at his way of life. He himself joined in the merriment.
"That's right, young countess, that's it, come on, I never saw anyone like her," said he, offering Nicholas a pipe with a long stem, and with a practiced motion of 3 fingers, taking down another that had been cut short. "She's ridden all day like a man and is as fresh as ever."
Soon after Uncle's reappearance, the door was opened, evidently from the sound of by a barefooted girl, and a stout, rosy, good-looking woman of about 40, with a double chin and full red lips, entered carrying a large, loaded tray. With hospitable dignity and cordiality in her glance and in every motion, she looked at the visitors and, with a pleasant smile, bowed respectfully. In spite of her exceptional stoutness, which caused her to protrude her chest and stomach and throw back her head, this woman, who was Uncle's housekeeper, trod very lightly. She went to the table, set down the tray, and with her plump white hands,
Gross.
deftly took from it the bottles and various hors d'oeuvres and dishes and arranged them on the table. When she had finished, she stepped aside and stopped at the door with a smile on her face. "Here I am she. Now do you understand, Uncle?" her expression said to Rostov. How could one help understanding? Not only Nicholas, not even Natasha understood the meaning of his puckered brow and the happy, complacent smile that slightly puckered his lips when Anisia Fedorovna entered. On the tray was a bottle of herb wine, different kinds of vodka, pickled mushrooms, rye cakes made with buttermilk, honey in the comb, still mead and sparkling mead, apples, nuts, raw and roasted, and nut and honey sweets. Afterwards, she brought a freshly roasted chicken, ham, preserves made with honey, and preserves made with sugar.
Amazingly, this low budget, poor people's meal is the only food that sounded good the entire time. There's no mayonnaise, no turtles.
That's true. It's quite a spread.
That's a lot.
At a moment's notice, too.
Mm-hmm. No big deal.
What do we eat nowadays?
I basically eat that.
Oh, yeah.
Without the chicken and the ham. Nuts, apples.
Preserves.
Well,
2 kinds of preserves.
kind of.
Honey in the comb. No, you wouldn't have that. This isn't very vegan.
No, but it's not the least vegan thing we've ever.
That's true.
Okay. All this was the fruit of Anisia Fedorovna's housekeeping, gathered and prepared by her. The smell and taste of it all had a smack of Anisia Fedorovna herself, a savor of juiciness, cleanliness, whiteness, and pleasant smiles. How weird is that?
Take this, little lady countess, she kept saying as she offered Natasha first one thing and then another.
Natasha ate of everything, and thought she had never seen or eaten such buttermilk cakes, such aromatic jam, such honey and nut sweets, or such a chicken anywhere. Anisia Fedorovna left the room.
After supper, over their cherry brandy, Rostov and Uncle talked of past and future hunts, of Rugai and Iligin's dogs, while Natasha sat upright on the sofa and listened with sparkling eyes. She tried several times to wake Petya that he might eat something, but he only muttered incoherent words without waking up. Natasha felt so lighthearted and happy in these novel surroundings that she only feared the trap would come for her too soon. After a casual pause, such as often occurs when receiving friends for the first time in one's own house, Uncle, answering a thought that was in his visitor's mind, said,
This, you see, is how I am finishing my days. Death will come. That's it. Come on. Nothing will remain. What a weird "that's it, come on" is such a weird, like, I don't know how to make that work.
Come on.
Nothing will remain. Then why harm anyone?
Uncle's face was very significant and even handsome as he said this. Involuntarily, Rostov recalled all the good he had heard about him from his father and the neighbors. Throughout the whole province, Uncle had the reputation of being the most honorable and disinterested of cranks. They called him in to decide family disputes, chose him as an executor, confided secrets to him, elected him to be a justice and to other posts, but he always persistently refused public appointments, passing the autumn and spring in the fields on his bay gelding, sitting at home in winter and lying in his overgrown garden in summer.
Why don't you enter the service, Uncle?
I did once, but gave it up. I'm not fit for it. That's it, come on. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
I can't make head or tail of it, that's for you. I haven't brains enough. Now, hunting is another matter. That's it, come on. Open the door there, he shouted. Why have you shut it?
The door at the end of the passage led to the huntsman's room, as they called the room for the hunt servants.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
There was a rapid patter of bare feet, and an unseen hand opened the door into the huntsman's room, from which came the clear sounds of a balalaika, on which someone, who was evidently a master of the art, was playing. Natasha had been listening to those strains for some time, and now went out into the passage to hear better.
That's Mitka, my coachman. I've got him a good balalaika. I'm fond of it, that's it. Go on.
Go on.
Just kidding, he doesn't say that there.
Ugh. It was the custom for Mitka to play the balalaika in the huntsman's room when Uncle returned from the chase. Uncle was fond of such music.
How good, really very good, said Nicholas with some unintentional superciliousness, as if ashamed to confess that the sounds pleased him very much.
Very good, said Natasha reproachfully, noticing her brother's tone. Not very good, it's simply delicious.
Just as Uncle's pickled mushrooms, honey, and cherry brandy had seemed to her the best in the world, so also that song, at that moment, seemed to her the acme of musical delight.
More, please, more, cried Natasha at the door as soon as the balalaika ceased. Mitka tuned up afresh and recommenced thrumming the balalaika to the air of My Lady with trills and variations. Uncle sat listening, slightly smiling, with his head on one side. The air was repeated 100 times. The balalaika was retuned several times, and the same notes were thrummed again. What? Oh, that's what that is.
It's the most insane looking thing.
Oh my goodness, it's massive.
I don't think that this is.
I want one.
We need to rent a room.
It's
for
the
it.
size of a person.
Wow. I think that one is particularly big.
Okay. The balalaika was retuned several times, and the same notes were thrummed again, but the listeners did not grow weary of it and wished to hear it again and again. Anisia Fedorovna came in and leaned her portly person against the doorpost.
You like listening, she said to Natasha with a smile extremely like Uncle's. That's a good player of ours, she added.
He doesn't play that part right, said Uncle suddenly with an energetic gesture. Here he ought to burst out. That's it. Come on. Ought to burst out.
Do you play then? Asked Natasha.
Uncle did not answer, but smiled.
Anicia, go and see if the strings of my guitar are all right. I haven't touched it for a long time. That's it. Come on, I've given it up.
Anicia, oh yeah, I never touch it, and he's gonna wow us. Anicia Fedorovna.
I bet you he's an excellent dancer.
Obviously. With her light step, willingly went to fulfill her errand and brought back the guitar.
Without looking at anyone, Uncle blew the dust off of it and tapping the case with his bony fingers, tuned the guitar, and settled himself in his armchair. He took the guitar a little above the fingerboard, arching his left elbow with a somewhat theatrical gesture, and, with a wink at Anisia Fedorovna, struck a single chord, pure and sonorous, and then quietly, smoothly, and confidently began playing in very slow time, not My Lady, but the well-known song, Came a Maiden Down the Street.
Ah, I know it well.
Would you like to sing?
Came a maiden down the street, down the street, down the...
I think Ishan knows this one too. The tune, played with precision and in exact time, began to thrill in the hearts of Nicholas and Natasha, arousing in them the same kind of sober mirth as radiated from Anisia Fedorovna's whole being. Anisia Fedorovna flushed, and drawing her kerchief over her face, went laughing out of the room. It's confusing. Uncle continued to play correctly, carefully, with energetic firmness, looking with a changed and inspired expression at the spot where Anisia Fedorovna had just stood. Something seemed to be laughing a little on one side of his face under his grey mustaches, especially as the song grew brisker and the time quicker, and when, here and there, as he ran his fingers over the strings, something seemed to snap.
Lovely, lovely. Go on, Uncle, go on, shouted Natasha as soon as he had finished. She jumped up and hugged and kissed him. Nicholas, Nicholas, she said, turning to her brother as if asking him, what is it moves me so?
Nicholas, too, was greatly pleased by Uncle's playing, and Uncle played the piece over again. Anisia Fedorovna's smiling face reappeared in the doorway, and behind hers, other faces.
Fetching water clear and sweet, stop, dear maiden, I entreat,
played Uncle once more, running his fingers skillfully over the strings, and then he stopped short and jerked his shoulders.
Go on, Uncle dear, Natasha wailed in an imploring tone, as if her life depended on it.
Uncle arose and was as if there were two men in him. One of them smiled seriously at the merry fellow, while the merry fellow struck a naive and precise attitude preparatory to a folk dance.
Now then, niece, he exclaimed, waving to Natasha the hand that had just struck a chord.
Natasha threw off the shawl from her shoulders, ran forward to face Uncle, and setting her arms akimbo, also made a motion with her shoulders and struck an attitude.
Where, how, and when had this young countess, educated by an émigré French governess, imbibed from the Russian air she breathed that spirit and obtained that manner which the Padishah would, one would have supposed, long ago have effaced?
What's the question?
Where, how, and when? But the spirit and the movements were those inimitable and unteachable Russian ones that Uncle had expected of her. As soon as she had struck her pose and smiled triumphantly, proudly, and with sly merriment, the fear that had at first seized Nicholas and the others that she might not do the right thing was at an end, and they were already admiring her.
It's dance. Why would she not do the right thing?
Dancing.
She did the right thing with such precision. Well, that's literally what it says. She did the right thing with such precision, such complete precision, that Anisia Fedorovna, who had at once handed her the handkerchief she needed for the dance, had tears in her eyes, though she laughed as she watched this slim, graceful countess, reared in silks and velvets and so different from herself, who yet was able to understand all that was in Anisia and in Anisia's father and mother and aunt, and in every Russian man and woman.
Oh, little countess, that's it, come on, cried Uncle, with a joyous laugh, having finished the dance. Well done, niece. Now a fine young fellow must be found as husband for you. That's it. Come on.
He's chosen already, said Nicholas, smiling.
Oh?
Nicholas.
Oh.
You're not supposed to talk about this.
Yeah, secrets. Oh, said Uncle in surprise, looking inquiringly at Natasha, who nodded her head with a happy smile.
And such a one, she said, but as soon as she said it, a new train of thoughts and feelings arose in her. What did Nicholas's smile mean when he said chosen already? Is he glad of it or not? It is as if he thought my Bolkonsky would not approve of or understand our gaiety. But he would understand it all. Where is he now? She thought, and her face suddenly became serious. But this only lasted a second. Don't dare think about it, she said to herself, and sat down again, smilingly beside Uncle, begging him to play something more.
Uncle played another song and a valse, and then, after a pause, he cleared his throat and sang his favorite hunting song.
As 'twas growing dark last night, fell the snow so soft and light.
Uncle sang as peasants sing, with full and naive conviction that the whole meaning of a song lies in the words, and that the tune comes of itself, and that apart from the words there is no tune, which exists only to give measure to the words. Yeah, that's how peasants sing. If you were confused. As a result of this, the unconsidered tune, like the song of a bird, was extraordinarily good. Natasha was in ecstasies over Uncle's singing. She resolved to give up learning the harp and to play only the guitar. She asked Uncle for his guitar and at once found the chords of the song.
After 9 o'clock, 2 traps and 3 mounted men, who had been sent to look for them, arrived to fetch Natasha and Petya. The Count and Countess did not know where they were and were very anxious, said one of the men.
Petya was carried out like a log and laid in the larger of the 2 traps. Natasha and Nicholas got into the other. Uncle wrapped Natasha up warmly and took leave of her with quite a new tenderness. He accompanied them on foot as far as the bridge that could not be crossed, so that they had to go round by the ford, and he sent huntsmen to ride in front with lanterns.
Goodbye, dear niece, his voice called out of the darkness. Not the voice Natasha had known previously, but the one that had sung, as 'twas growing dark last night.
In the village through which they passed, there were red lights and a cheerful smell of smoke.
What a darling Uncle is, said Natasha when they had come out onto the high road.
Yes, returned Nicholas. You're not cold?
No, I'm quite all right. I feel so comfortable, answered Natasha, almost perplexed by her feelings. They remained silent a long while. The night was dark and damp. They could not see the horses, but only heard them splashing through the unseen mud.
What was passing in that receptive, childlike soul that so eagerly caught and assimilated all the diverse impressions of life? How did they all find place in her? But she was very happy. As they were nearing home, she suddenly struck up the air of As 'Twas Growing Dark Last Night, the tune of which she had all the way been trying to get and had at last caught.
Got it, said Nicholas.
What were you thinking about just now, Nicholas? Inquired Natasha.
They were fond of asking one another that question.
Said Nicholas, trying to remember. Well, you see, first I thought that Rouget, the red hound, was like Uncle, and that if he were a man, he would always keep Uncle near him, if not for his riding, then for his manner. What a good fellow Uncle is. Don't you think so? Well, and you?
Wait a bit, wait. Yes, first I thought... I love it.
This is cute. What are you thinking about?
Yes. First I thought that we were driving along and imagining that we are going home, but that heaven knows where we are really going, in the darkness, and that we shall arrive and suddenly find that we are not in Otradno, but in fairyland. And then I thought, no, nothing else.
I know, I expect you thought of him, said Nicholas, smiling as Natasha knew by the sound of his voice.
No, said Natasha, though she had in reality been thinking about Prince Andrew at the same time as of the rest, and of how he would have liked Uncle. And then I was saying to myself all the way, how well Anicia carried herself, how well! And Nicholas heard her spontaneous, happy, ringing laughter. And do you know, she suddenly said, I know that I shall never again be as happy and tranquil as I am now. Why would you make such a foreshadowing?
Rubbish, nonsense, humbug, exclaimed Nicholas, and he thought, how charming this Natasha of mine is. I have no other friend like her and never shall have. Why should she marry? We might always drive about together.
What a darling this Nicholas of mine is, thought Natasha.
There are still lights in the drawing room, she said, pointing to the windows of the house that gleamed invitingly in the moist, velvety darkness of the night.
What a love fest.
Oh my God, they just love each other. Yeah, really.
It's a bloodbath, and then...
Let's kill something. And then...
Oh, isn't it just grow? How marvelously wonderful.
I feel like I'm jealous of this. I want to have this reaction to everything. Ugh!
I feel like I have this reaction a lot.
Really?
Yes.
Like, I love him! He's
Yeah.
amazing! Yeah, okay.
7, 8. 8.
Chapter 8.
Your man. Count Ilya Rostov had resigned the position of marshal of the nobility because it involved him in too much expense, but still his affairs did not improve. Natasha and Nicholas often noticed their parents conferring together anxiously and privately, and heard suggestions of selling the fine ancestral Rostov house and estate near Moscow. It was not necessary to entertain so freely as when the Count had been marshal, and life at Otradno was quieter than in former years, but still the enormous house and its lodges were full of people, and more than 20 sat down to table every day. These were all their own people who had settled down in the house almost as members of the family, or persons who were, it seemed, obliged to live in the Count's house. What? People who, it seems, were obliged to live in the Count's house?
Yes.
Why would you be obliged to live in the house? Just feel obliged to live here. Such were Dimler, the musician, and his wife, Vogel, the dancing master, and his family, Belova, an old maiden lady, an inmate of the house, what? And many others, such as Petya's tutors, the girl's former governess, and other people who simply found it preferable and more advantageous to live in the Count's house than at home.
I want to live in this Count's house. Sounds great.
Anyone can come and go wherever they please.
Really?
They had not as many visitors as before, but the old habits of life, without which the Count and Countess could not conceive of existence, remained unchanged. There was still the hunting establishment, which Nicholas had even enlarged. The same 50 horses and 15 grooms in the stables. The same expensive presents and dinner parties to the whole district on name days. There were still the Count's games of whist in Boston, at which, spreading out his cards so that everybody could see them, he let himself be plundered of hundreds of rubles every day by his neighbors, who looked upon an opportunity to play a rubber with Count Rostov as a most profitable source of income. What
See?
are they doing?
Yeah. The Count moved in his affairs as in a huge net,
See?
trying not to believe that he was entangled, but becoming more and more so at every step, and feeling too feeble to break the meshes or to set to work carefully and patiently to disentangle them. The Countess, with her loving heart, felt that her children were being ruined, that it was not the Count's fault, for he could not help being what he was, that, though he tried to hide it, he himself suffered from the consciousness of his own and his children's ruin. And she tried to find means of remedying the position. From her feminine point of view, she could see only one solution, namely, for Nicholas to marry a rich heiress. She felt this to be their last hope, and that if Nicholas refused the match she had found for him, she would have to abandon the hope of ever getting matters right. This match was with Julie Karagina, the daughter of excellent and virtuous parents, a girl the Rostovs had known from childhood, and who had now become a wealthy heiress through the death of the last of her brothers.
She was the one who was hitting on Nicholas at that very, very early dinner. And
Yeah.
Sonia was pissed.
Yeah, way, way back.
The Countess had written direct to Julie's mother in Moscow, suggesting a marriage between their children, and had received a favorable answer from her. Karagina had replied that for her part she was agreeable, and everything depended on her daughter's inclination. She invited Nicholas to come to Moscow.
Several times the Countess, with tears in her eyes, told her son that now both her daughters were settled, her only wish was to see him married. She said she could lie down in her grave peacefully if that were accomplished. Then she told him that she knew of a splendid girl and tried to discover what he thought about marriage.
At other times, she praised Julie to him, and advised him to go to Moscow during the holidays to amuse himself. Nicholas guessed what his mother's remarks were leading to, and during one of these conversations induced her to speak quite frankly. She told him that her only hope of getting their affairs disentangled now lay in his marrying Julie Karagina.
Mamma, suppose I loved a girl who had no fortune. Could you expect me to sacrifice my feelings and my honor for the sake of money?
Yes.
He asked his mother.
Isn't that what everybody's doing?
Yes. Not realizing the cruelty of his question and only wishing to show his noble-mindedness.
No, you have not understood me, said his mother, not knowing how to justify herself. You have not understood me, Nikolenka. It is your happiness I wish for, she added, feeling that she was telling an untruth and was becoming entangled. So she began to cry. There's no soul.
Mama, don't cry. Only tell me that you wish it, and you know I will give my life, anything to put you at ease, said
Okay.
Nicholas.
So then why are we even talking about it?
Yeah, so just do it, Nicholas. I would sacrifice anything for you, even my feelings.
I don't know. I guess that was supposed to sound like a...
Even my feelings.
Just didn't seem that much. Didn't seem that impressive.
Yeah.
Okay. But the Countess did not want the question put like that. She did not want to sacrifice from her son. She herself wished to make a sacrifice for him. What is happening?
No, you have not understood me. Don't let us talk about it, she replied, wiping away her tears.
Yes, don't talk about it. That'll help.
Yes.
You understand each other.
Remember, they really love each other.
Because he was waiting for her that one time?
Yeah. That one time. I love how it has to be like, remember they love each other? Like you know, like a mother and a son.
Thing. Yeah. Maybe I do love a poor girl, said Nicholas to himself. Am I to sacrifice my feelings and my honor for money?
Yes, you just said you would.
I wonder how Mama could speak so to me. Because Sonia is poor, I must not love her, he thought. Must not respond to her faithful, devoted love. Yet I should certainly be happier with her than with some doll like Julie. I can always sacrifice my feelings for my family's welfare, he said to himself. But I can't coerce my feelings. If I love Sonia, that feeling is for me stronger and higher than all else. Since when?
So he can't sacrifice his feelings, but
No,
he can. But he can't coerce them.
No.
No. Nicholas did not go to Moscow, and the Countess did not renew the conversation with him about marriage.
Piece of shit.
She saw with sorrow and sometimes with exasperation symptoms of a growing attachment between her son and the portionless Sonia. Though she blamed herself for it, she could not refrain from grumbling at and worrying Sonia, often pulling her up without reason, addressing her stiffly as my dear, and using the formal you instead of the intimate thou in speaking to her. The kind-hearted Countess was the more vexed with Sonia because that poor dark-eyed niece of hers was so meek, so kind, so devotedly grateful to her benefactors, and so faithfully, unchangingly, and unselfishly in love with Nicholas. There were no grounds for finding fault with her.
Nicholas was spending the last of his leave at home. A fourth letter had come from Prince Andrew from Rome, in which he wrote that he would have been on his way back to Russia long ago had not his wound unexpectedly reopened in the warm climate. From what's it called?
From the battle. His wound, that he almost died.
I thought a lot had happened since then. Yeah. Which obliged him to defer his return till the beginning of the new year. Natasha was still as much in love with her betrothed, found the same comfort in that love, and was still as ready to throw herself into all the pleasures of life as before. But at the end of the 4th month of their separation, she began to have fits of depression which she could not master. She felt sorry for herself, sorry that she was being wasted all this time and of no use to anyone, while she felt herself so capable of loving and being loved. Things were not cheerful in the Rostovs' home.
Chapter 9.
The Rostovs.
Christmas came, and except for the ceremonial mass, the solemn and wearisome Christmas congratulations from neighbors and servants, and the new dresses everyone put on, there were no special festivities, though the calm frost of 20 degrees Reaumur, the dazzling sunshine by day, and the starlight of the winter nights seemed to call for some special celebration of the season.
On the 3rd day of Christmas week, after the midday dinner, all the inmates of the house dispersed to various rooms. It was the dullest time of the day. Nicholas, who had been visiting some neighbors that morning, was asleep on the sitting-room sofa. The old count was resting in his study. Sonia sat in the drawing-room at the round table, copying a design for embroidery. The countess was playing patience. Nastasia Ivanovna, the buffoon, sat with a sad face at the window with two old ladies. Natasha came into the room, went up to Sonia, glanced at what she was doing, and then went up to her mother and stood without speaking.
Why are you wandering about like an outcast? Asked her mother. What do you want?
Him. I want him now, this minute. I want him, said Natasha, with glittering eyes and no sign of a smile.
The Countess lifted her head and looked attentively at her daughter.
Don't look at me, Mamma. Don't look. I shall cry directly.
Sit down with me a little, said the Countess.
Mamma, I want him. Why should I be wasted like this, Mamma?
Her voice broke. Tears gushed from her eyes, and she turned quickly to hide them and left the room.
She passed into the sitting room, stood there thinking a while, and then went into the maid's room. There, an old maidservant was grumbling at a young girl who stood panting, having just running from the cold from the serfs' quarters. In through the cold from the serfs' quarters.
Stop playing. There's a time for everything, said the old woman.
Let her go, Kondratevna, said Natasha. Go, Mavrushka, go.
Having released Mavrushka, Natasha crossed the dancing hall and went to the vestibule. There, an old footman and two young ones were playing cards. They broke off and rose as she entered.
What can I do with them, thought Natasha.
Oh, Nikita, please go. Where can I send him? Yes, go to the yard and fetch a fowl, please, a cock. And you, Misha, bring me some oats.
Who's talking? Just a few oats, said Misha cheerfully and readily.
Go quickly, the old man urged him.
And you, Theodore, get me a piece of chalk.
On her way past the butler's pantry, she told them to set a samovar, though it was not at all the time for tea.
I don't know what's happening.
I think she's just going through the house and we're seeing all the people.
Okay. Folka, the butler, was the most ill-tempered person in the house. Natasha liked to test her power over him. He distrusted the order and asked whether the samovar was really wanted.
Oh dear, what a young lady, said Folka, pretending to frown at Natasha.
No one in the house sent people about or gave them as much trouble as Natasha did. She could not see people unconcernedly, but had to send them on some errand. She seemed to be trying whether any of them would get angry or sulky with her. But the serfs fulfilled no one's orders readily, so readily as they did hers. What can I do? Where can I go? Thought she, as she went slowly.
Nastasia Ivanovna, what sort of children shall I have? She asked the buffoon, who was coming toward her in a woman's jacket.
Why, fleas, crickets, grasshoppers, answered the buffoon.
Oh Lord, it's always the same. Oh, where am I to go? What am I to do with myself? And tapping with her heels, she ran quickly upstairs to see Vogel and his wife, who lived on the upper story.
Two governesses were sitting with the Vogels at a table on which were plates of raisins, walnuts, and almonds. The governesses were discussing whether it was cheaper to live in Moscow or Odessa. Natasha sat down, listened to their talk with a serious and thoughtful air, and then got up again.
The island of Madagascar, she said. Madagascar, she repeated, articulating each syllable distinctly. And not replying to Madame Schoss, who asked her what she was saying, she went out of the room.
Why are we not doing Russian accents this whole time?
Oh, great.
How is this just now coming up?
I don't know. You wanna do that?
I'm not sure. Her brother Petya was upstairs too, with the man in attendance on him. He was preparing fireworks to let off that night.
Petya, she called to him. Carry me downstairs.
Petya ran up and offered her his back. She jumped on it, putting her arms around his neck, and he pranced along with her.
No, don't. The island of Madagascar, she said, and jumping off his back, she went downstairs.
Having as it were reviewed, what? Having as it were reviewed her kingdom.
I think that's it.
Thanks for all the help, Tolstoy. Having, as it were, reviewed her kingdom, tested her power, and made sure that everyone was submissive, but that all the same it was dull, Natasha betook herself to the ballroom, picked up her guitar, sat down in a dark corner behind a bookcase, and began to run her fingers over the strings in the bass, picking out a passage she recalled from an opera she had heard in Petersburg with Prince Andrew. What she drew from the guitar would have had no meaning for other listeners, but in her imagination a whole series of reminiscences arose from those sounds. She sat behind the bookcase with her eyes fixed on a streak of light escaping from the pantry door and listened to herself and pondered.
Natasha glanced at her and at the crack in the pantry door, and it seemed to her that she remembered the light falling through that crack once before, and Sonia passing with a glass in her hand. Yes, it was exactly the same, thought Natasha.
Sonia, what is this? She cried, twanging a thick string.
Oh, you are there, said Sonia with a start, and came near and listened. I don't know, a storm? She ventured timidly, afraid of being wrong.
There, that's just how she started and just how she came up, smiling timidly when all this happened before, thought Natasha. And in just the same way, I thought there was something lacking in her.
No, it's the chorus from the water carrier. Listen. And Natasha sang the air of the chorus so that Sonia could catch it. Where are you going? She asked.
To change the water in this glass. I'm just finishing the design.
You always find something to do, but I can't, said Natasha. Where's Nicholas?
Asleep, I think.
Sonia, go and wake him, said Natasha. Tell him I want him to come and sing.
She sat a while, wondering what the meaning of it all, having happened before, could be, and without solving this problem, or at all regretting not having done so, she again passed in fancy to the time when she was with him, and he was looking at her with a lover's eyes.
Oh, if only he would come quicker. I am so afraid it will never be. And worst of all, I am growing old. That's the thing. There won't then be in me what there is now. But perhaps he'll come today. Will come immediately. Perhaps he has come and is sitting in the drawing room. Perhaps he came yesterday, and I have forgotten it. She rose, put down the guitar, and went to the drawing room.
All the domestic circle, tutors, governesses, and guests were already at the tea table. The servants stood around the table, but Prince Andrew was not there, and life was going on as before.
Ah, here she is, said the old count when he saw Natasha enter. Well, sit down by me. But Natasha stayed by her mother and glanced round as if looking for something.
Mamma, she muttered, give him to me. Give him, Mamma, quickly, quickly. And she again had difficulty in repressing her sobs.
She sat down at the table and listened to the conversation between the elders and Nicholas, who had also come to the table. My God, the same faces, the same talk. Papa holding his cup and blowing in the same way, thought Natasha, feeling with horror a sense of repulsion rising up in her for the whole household, because they were always the same.
After tea, Nicholas, Sonia, and Natasha went to the sitting room, to their favorite corner, where their most intimate talks always began.
We never talked about the buffoon.
Yeah. What is that?
I have no idea.
Well, they call him he.
They call him he, but he dresses in women's clothing and
uses a woman's name.
Yeah. Is that just for their own amusement? Is this like a drag queen? Has drag been around for longer than I am aware?
Oh, I'm sure.
But is it also like not... How do I put it?
Like there's transgendered sort of characters that go hundreds of years back.
Well, so is it that, or is it like, ha ha ha, let's make fun of him by putting him in...
That's not what it seemed like to me.
Okay.
It seemed like the way he was introduced was like, this is what he does.
Right.
I mean, that means nothing, and maybe that's just the impression I got.
But he has a category, the buffoon.
Yeah. I don't know how they picked the word buffoon when translating it, you know?
Right, okay.
I don't know what.
I don't know if it's like the fool, you know?
Yeah.
Like
that's kind of what it seems like. Because also the one thing that just happened was very fool-like.
Mm-hmm. Right, definitely.
It's like Beatles and whatever.
Yeah, he just says nonsense. That's what he does. Court gesture.
I guess then maybe, I don't know. Something to look into.
Yeah, it's just like what came first. Like, is that a choice he's making as a buffoon? Or is he trans and that meant the job that best suited him was a buffoon.
I'm leaning towards the second, but only because it seems like too much of a coincidence. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Because if you were nonsense, then you wouldn't necessarily be like coherently in women's clothing with a woman's name. I don't know. There's something like a slightly uniform about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would be more like chaos, maybe, based on his one answer to this one question about babies.
It's crazy in these houses. It's like an entire village in one house.
So many people.
You know?
Maybe they're responsible for feeding everyone.
I think they are.
Yeah. Just one reason they hemorrhage money, I'm sure. You want to stop?
Let's do one more.
What's the doing this long?
It's a little long.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chapter 10. Does it ever happen to you, said Natasha to her brother when they settled down in the sitting room, does it ever happen to you to feel as if there were nothing more to come? Nothing, that everything good is past, and to feel not exactly dull, but sad?
I shouldn't think so, he replied. I felt like that when everything was all right and everyone was cheerful. The thought has come into my mind that I was already tired of it all and that we must all die. Once in the regiment, I had not gone to some merrymaking where there was music, and suddenly I felt so depressed.
Yes, I know, Natasha interrupted him. When I was quite little, that used to be so with me. Do you remember when I was punished once about some plums? We were all dancing, and I sat sobbing in the schoolroom. I shall never forget it. I felt sad and sorry for everyone, for myself and for everyone. And I was innocent. That was the chief thing, said Natasha. Do you remember?
I remember, answered Nicholas. I remember that I came to you afterwards and wanted to comfort you, but do you know, I felt ashamed too. We were terribly absurd. I had a funny doll then and wanted to give it to you. You remember?
And do you remember, Natasha asked with a pensive smile, how once, long, long ago, when we were quite little, Uncle called us into the study. That was in the old house. And it was dark. We went in, and suddenly there stood...
A Negro, chimed in Nicholas, with a smile of delight. Of course I remember. Even now I don't know whether there really was a Negro, or if we only dreamed it or were told about him.
He was grey, you remember, and had white teeth and stood and looked at us.
Sonia, do you remember? Asked Nicholas.
Yes, I do remember something too, Sonia answered timidly.
You know, I have asked Papa and Mama about that Negro, said Natasha, and they say there was no Negro at all. But you see, you remember.
Of course I do. I remember his teeth as if I had just seen them.
Strange it is. It's as if it were a dream. I like that.
And do you remember how we rolled hard-boiled eggs in the ballroom, and suddenly two old women began spinning round on the carpet? Was that real or not? Do you remember what fun it was?
Yes, and you remember how Papa in his blue overcoat fired a gun in the porch?
So they went through their memories, smiling with pleasure, not the sad memories of old age, but poetic, youthful ones, those impressions of one's most distant past in which dreams and realities blend, and they laughed with quiet enjoyment.
Sonia, as always, did not quite keep pace with them, though they shared the same reminiscences.
Much that they remembered had slipped from her mind, and what she recalled did not arouse the same poetic feeling as they experienced. She simply enjoyed their pleasure and tried to fit in with it.
She only really took part when they recalled Sonia's first arrival. She told them how afraid she had been of Nicholas because he had on a corded jacket, and her nurse had told her that she, too, would be sewn up with cords.
And I remember their telling me that you had been born under a cabbage, said Natasha. And I remember that I dared not disbelieve it then, but knew that it was not true, and I felt so uncomfortable.
While they were talking, a maid thrust her head in at the other door of the sitting room.
They have brought the cock, miss, she said in a whisper.
It isn't wanted, Petya. Tell them to take it away, replied Natasha.
In the middle of their talk in the sitting room, Dimmler came in and went up to the harp that stood there in the corner. He took off its cloth covering, and the harp gave out a jarring sound.
Mr. Dimmler, please play my favorite nocturne by Field, came the old countess's voice from the drawing room.
Dimmler struck a chord and, turning to Natasha, Nicholas and Sonia remarked, "How quiet you young people are."
Yes, we're philosophizing, said Natasha, glancing around for a moment and then continuing the conversation. They were now discussing dreams.
Dimmler began to play. Natasha went on tiptoe noiselessly to the table, took up a candle, carried it out, and returned, seated herself quietly in her former place. It was dark in the room, especially where they were sitting on the sofa, but through the big windows the silvery light of the full moon fell on the floor. Dimmler had finished the piece, but still sat softly running his fingers over the strings, evidently uncertain whether to stop or to play something else.
Do you know, said Natasha in a whisper, moving closer to Nicholas and Sonia, that when one goes on and on recalling memories, one at last begins to remember what happened before one was in the world?
That is metempsychosis. Yeah, said Sonia, who had always learned well and remembered everything. The Egyptians believed that our souls have lived in animals and will go back into animals again.
No, I don't believe we were ever in animals, said Natasha, still in a whisper, though the music had ceased. But I am certain that we were angels somewhere there, and have been here. And that is why we remember.
May I join you? Said Dimmler, who had come up quietly and sat down by them.
If we have been angels, why have we fallen lower? Said Nicholas. No, that can't be.
What lower? Who said we were lower? How do I know what I was before? Natasha rejoined with conviction. The soul is immortal. Well then, if I shall always live, I must have lived before. Lived for a whole eternity.
Yes, but it is hard for us to imagine eternity, remarked Dimmler, who had joined the young folk with a mildly condescending smile, but now spoke as quietly and seriously as they.
Why is it hard to imagine eternity? Said Natasha. It is now today, and it will be tomorrow, and always, and there was yesterday, and the day before.
Natasha, now it's your turn. Sing me something, they heard the Countess say. Why are you sitting there like conspirators?
I don't at all want to, replied Natasha, but all the same she rose.
None of them, not even the middle-aged Dimmler, wanted to break off their conversation and quit that corner in the sitting room. But Natasha got up and Nicholas sat down at the clavichord. Standing as usual in the middle of the hall and choosing the place where the resonance was best, Natasha began to sing her mother's favorite song.
She had said she did not want to sing, but it was long since she had sung, and long before she sang again, as she did that evening.
Ominous. Uh-oh.
The Count, from his study where he was talking to Matenka, heard her, and, like a schoolboy in a hurry to run out to play, blundered in his talk while giving orders to the steward, and at last stopped, while Matenka stood in front of him, also listening and smiling. Nicholas did not take his eyes off his sister, and drew breath in time with her. Sonia, as she listened, thought of the immense difference there was between herself and her friend, and how impossible it was for her to be anything like as bewitching as her cousin. The old countess sat with a blissful yet sad smile, and with tears in her eyes, occasionally shaking her head. She thought of Natasha and of her own youth, and of how there was something unnatural and dreadful in this impending marriage of Natasha and Prince Andrew.
Dimmler, who had seated himself beside the Countess, listened with closed eyes.
Ah, Countess, he said at last, that's a European talent. She has nothing to learn. What softness, tenderness, and strength.
Ah, how afraid I am for her, how afraid I am, said the Countess, not realizing to whom she was speaking. Her maternal instinct told her that Natasha had too much of something, and that because of this she would not be happy. Before Natasha had finished singing, 14-year-old Petya rushed in delightedly to say that some mummers had arrived.
Natasha stopped abruptly.
Idiot! She screamed at her brother, and running to a chair, threw herself on it, sobbing so violently that she could not stop for a long time.
It's nothing, Mamma. Really, it's nothing. Only Petya startled me, she said, trying to smile, but her tears still flowed and sobs still choked her.
That's like dumbass. The mummers, some of the house serfs, dressed up as bears, Turks, what? Innkeepers and ladies, frightening and funny, bringing in with them the cold from outside, and a feeling of gaiety, crowded, at first timidly, into the anteroom, then hiding behind one another, they pushed into the ballroom, where, shyly at first, and then more and more merrily and heartily, they started singing, dancing, and playing Christmas games. That was a long sentence. The Countess, when she had identified them and laughed at their costumes, went into the drawing room. The Count sat in the ballroom, smiling radiantly and applauding the players. The young people had disappeared.
Half an hour later, there appeared among the other mummers in the ballroom an old lady in a hoop skirt. This was Nicholas. What? A Turkish girl was Petya, a clown was Dimmler, an Azar was Natasha, and a Circassian was Sonia with burnt cork mustache and eyebrows.
After the condescending surprise, non-recognition, and praise for those who were not themselves dressed up, the young people decided that their costumes were so good that they ought to be shown elsewhere.
Nicholas, who, as the roads were in splendid condition, wanted to take them all for a drive in his troika, proposed to take with them about a dozen of the serf mummers and drive to Uncle's.
No, why disturb the old fellow, said the countess. Besides, you wouldn't have room to turn round there. If you must go, go to the Melyukovs.
Melyukova was a widow who, with her family and their tutors and governesses, lived 3 miles from the Rostovs.
That's right, my dear, chimed in the old count, thoroughly aroused. Whoa. I'll dress up at once and go with them. I'll make Pachette open her eyes. What?
I'll make Pachette open her eyes.
Freaky deaky.
But the countess would not agree to his going. He had had a bad leg all these last days. It was decided that the count must not go, but that if Louisa Ivanovna, Madame Schoss, would go with them, the young ladies might go to the Melyukovs. Sonia, generally so timid and shy, more urgently than anyone, begging Louisa Ivanovna not to refuse.
Sonia's costume was the best of all. Her mustache and eyebrows were extraordinarily becoming. Everyone told her she looked very handsome, and she was in a spirited and energetic mood unusual with her. Some inner voice told her that now or never her fate would be decided, and in her male attire she seemed quite a different person. Louisa Ivanovna consented to go, and in half an hour 4 troika sleighs with large and small bells, their runners squeaking and whistling over the frozen snow, drove up to the porch.
Natasha was foremost in setting a merry holiday tone, which, passing from one to another, grew stronger and reached its climax when they all came out into the frost.
Into the frost!
And got into the sleighs, talking, calling to one another, laughing and shouting.
2 of the troikas were the usual household sleighs. The third was the old count's with a trotter from the Orlov stud as shaft horse. The fourth was Nicholas's own with a short, shaggy black shaft horse. Nicholas, in his old lady's dress, over which he had belted his hussar overcoat, stood in the middle of the sleigh, reins in hand.
It was so light that he could see the moonlight reflected from the metal harness discs and from the eyes of the horses, who looked round in alarm at the noisy party under the shadow of the porch roof.
Natasha, Sonia, Madame Schoss, and 2 maids got into Nicholas's sleigh. Dimmler, his wife, and Petya into the old count's, and the rest of the mummers seated themselves in the other 2 sleighs.
You go ahead, Zakhar, shouted Nicholas to his father's coachman, wishing for a chance to race past him.
The old count's troika, with Dimmler and his party, started forward, squeaking on its runners as though freezing to the snow, its deep-toned bell clanging. The side horses, pressing against the shafts of the middle horse, sank in the snow, which was dry and glittered like sugar, and threw it up.
Nicholas set off, following the first sleigh. Behind him the others moved noisily, their runners squeaking. At first they drove at a steady trot along the narrow road. While they drove past the garden, and the shadows of the bare trees often fell across the road and hid the brilliant moonlight. But as soon as they were past the fence, the snowy plain bathed in moonlight and motionless spread out before them, glittering like diamonds and dappled with bluish shadows. Bang, bang went the first sleigh over a cradle hole in the snow of the road, and each of the other sleighs jolted in the same way. And rudely breaking the frost-bound stillness, the troikas began to speed along the road, one after the other.
A hare's track. A lot of tracks, rang out Natasha's voice through the frost-bound air.
How light it is, Nicholas, came Sonia's voice.
Nicholas glanced round at Sonia and bent down to see her face closer. Quite a new, sweet face with black eyebrows and mustaches peeped up at him from her sable furs, so close and yet so distant in the moonlight.
That used to be Sonia, thought he. I looked at her closer and smiled.
What is it, Nicholas?
Nothing, said he, and turned again to the horses.
When they came out onto the beaten high road, polished by sleigh runners and cut up by rough-shod hooves, the marks of which were visible in the moonlight, the horses began to tug at the reins of their own accord and increased their pace. The near side horse, arching his head and breaking into a short canter, tugged at his traces. The shaft horse swayed from side to side, moving his ears as if asking, "Isn't it time to begin now?" In front, already far ahead, the deep bell of the sleigh ringing farther and farther off, the black horses driven by Zakar could be clearly seen against the white snow. From that sleigh, one could hear the shouts, laughter, and voices of the mummers.
"Gee up, my darlings," shouted Nicholas, pulling the reins to one side and flourishing the whip.
It was only by the keener wind that met them and the jerks given by the side horses who pulled harder, ever increasing their gallop, that one noticed how fast the troika was flying. Nicholas looked back. With screams, squeals, and waving of whips that caused even the shaft horses to gallop, the other sleighs followed. The shaft horse swung steadily beneath the bow over its head, with no thought of slackening pace and ready to put on speed when required.
Nicholas overtook the first sleigh. They were driving downhill and coming out upon a broad, trodden track across a meadow near a river.
"Where are we?" thought he. "It's the Kozoi meadow, I suppose, but no. This is something new I've never seen before. This isn't the Kozoi meadow, nor the Demkin Hill, and heaven only knows what it is. It's something new and enchanted. Well, whatever it may be," and shouting to his horses, he began to pass the first sleigh.
Zakar held back his horses and turned his face, which was already covered with hoarfrost to his eyebrows.
Nicholas gave the horses the rein, and Zakar, stretching out his arms, clucked his tongue and let his horses go.
"Now look out, master!" he cried.
Faster still the two troikas flew side by side, and faster moved the feet of the galloping side horses. Nicholas began to draw ahead. Zakar, while still keeping his arms extended, raised one hand with the reins.
"No, you won't, master," he shouted.
Nicholas put all his horses to a gallop and passed Zakar. The horses showered the fine, dry snow on the faces of those in the sleigh. Beside them sounded quick ringing bells, and they caught confused glimpses of swiftly moving legs and the shadows of the troika they were passing. The whistling sound of the runners on the snow and the voices of girls shrieking were heard from different sides.
Again checking his horses, Nicholas looked round him. They were still surrounded by the magic plain, bathed in moonlight and spangled with stars.
Zakar is shouting that I should turn to the left, but why to the left, thought Nicholas. Are we getting to the Melyukovs? Is this Melyukova? Heaven only knows where we are going, and heaven knows what is happening to us, but it is very strange and pleasant, whatever it is. He's so confused all the time. And he looked round in the sleigh.
"Look, his mustache and eyelashes are all white," said one of the strange, pretty, unfamiliar people, the one with fine eyebrows and mustache.
I think this used to be Natasha, thought Nicholas, and that was Madame Schoss. But perhaps it's not on this occasion with the mustache, I don't know, but I love her.
"Aren't you cold?" he asked.
They did not answer, but began to laugh. Dimmler from the sleigh behind shouted something, probably something funny, but they could not make out what it was.
"Yes, yes," some voices answered, laughing.
But here was a fairy forest with black moving shadows and a glitter of diamonds and a flight of marble steps and the silver roofs of fairy buildings and the shrill yells of some animals. And if this is really Melyukova, it is still stranger that we drove heaven knows where and have come to Melyukova, thought Nicholas.
It really was Melyukova. Melyukovka? And maids and footmen with merry faces came running out to the porch carrying candles.
"Who is it?" asked someone in the porch.
"The mummers from the Count's. I know by the horses," replied some voices.
What was the point of that sleigh ride?
"Oh, a sleigh ride."
What was the point of that sleigh ride?
It was just to be there in the sleigh with all of them.
Am I a charlatan? Like, I'm acting like there needs to be a point to everything.
Yeah.
But I kind of think there needs to be a point to everything.
What do you mean by a point?
Like, why did we just spend so much energy on the ride there?
To get the excitement of the moment?
Does this happen in other books? I can't tell if this is weird or not, because it's weird to me.
He spends a lot of time on things. That's why it's like a mosaic. I mean, 3,500 pages, you know?
I mean, no wonder it's 3,500 pages.
I remember Lord of the Rings having this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's always like nature.
Yeah.
Like it's always like landscape and geography and that
And I think a lot about, one of the things I think a lot about in Lord of the Rings is Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
What is the point of that? That is a hefty portion of, I think it's the first book.
I don't remember thinking he was useless.
Really?
Yeah, it's just one of the things that happens to them. And I think
That's
it's
what I
like
mean.
the closest, it's the closest to them. He's the closest to because it starts to get like stranger and stranger almost. It's the closest to their world while still being quite out of their world. It's not like they fall out of the Shire and it's just like orcs.
So it's a happy stepping stone. Like they're going.
Yeah, it's like a warm.
Okay. This to me is very Little Women, where it's just it's a nice happy portrait that you want to cozy up inside.
Guess I don't get the point of that.
I don't know the point of the sleigh ride. I feel like this is leading up to something between Simon and Nicholas finally, and maybe the excitement of the sleigh ride has to do with that.
Yes, but do you feel like the hunt led up to anything?
I feel this is the most we've gone into the Rostovs. Again, it just feels like this portrait, like, okay, here's this other part of Russian society life, hunt. And then from that, we also get another perspective into, like, people with less than all the other people we've seen and how charming it is. It's a whole world we're getting.
Okay. I mean, it's not like this is the first book I've read with a world, with a lot of world.
But if you were to say so far the story of War and Peace, what would you say is the story?
That it's about like a group of people who, most of whom start out with a lot of privilege, and you follow them sort of into the war. And through the sort of family dramas, which involve like some relationships and a couple of injuries and some emotions. The end.
So you think it's just about like a few select characters and their privilege and how they are going into the war and how they are exiting.
Yeah, and as a way of seeing how the war like affects Russia, affects one part of Russia.
Yeah.
That being said, I probably wouldn't like Little Women for sort of similar reasons.
Little Women, you have to go full throttle with the sincerity of it.
I think maybe no, see, that's not even true. I was going to say I don't like stories maybe that are about nothing, but that's not exactly true. Because Midnight's Children is just like a bunch of family stuff, and it's like easily one of my favorite things. Wow, it's boring.
Yeah. So, okay. It's just that this nothing isn't interesting to you.
It feels like it was translated, or that it's like on a wavelength that I'm not on, or just something I feel like I'm missing. Which isn't to say that like wherever it is resonating, it's resonating. I don't know. I'm not calling it a shitty book, and I'm also not. But I do think that like it should be accessible, ideally.
I don't know if it's just very like it's very Russian, very European in that way.
I mean, I haven't read a ton of Russian authors. Maybe.
I'm just also thinking this passage specifically is very Christmassy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you really care about that. Not that I even, like, I'm not like a Christmas person, but it's that like, that's like warm by the fire feeling that I'm getting from it.
Yeah, I guess which I hear, I would understand. I find long descriptions of things that are good confusing. Because, like, great, but then the longer we stay, the more I'm like, what's to do? Is like something about. It's like, you know,
you
the
would
way that
hate Little Women.
I think I would actually.
Yeah.
It's something, you know, like there are cues, right? That music, when you watch a film, the music is giving you cues.
Yeah.
And the shot, there's all these things that are giving you cues that lead you to expect certain things. I feel like I can't read his cues because this, like some long drawn out thing that feels to me like it's long and drawn out is creating a level of tension that I don't think that it doesn't appear that he's intending. So it's kind of like there's some like dissonant
is it like that
signing.
Right, that you think like when things are good, this is that thing again. Things are only good as an
like how long can they possibly be good for?
Like they're good so that when something bad happens, it's all the more tragic. So when there's like a long drawn out happy passage, you're like, okay, when's the bad thing happening?
But it's also like I like the stuff that's more charactery or somehow more, like for lack of a better word, more interesting.
Right.
It's not like I don't like good things, but if it's like interesting and good, like Natasha getting over her not breakup, but like her like. Or them telling each other what they are thinking of.
Yeah.
Like the things that have a lot of color, I like.
You like that portion.
Yeah. But some of the stuff, I just don't know why it's here.
Right, okay.
And that's the stuff that I'm talking about. Like why this sleigh ride was so long.
Could you track it? The sleigh ride?
No, because I felt like there was something that was like speeding up.
Okay.
It was speeding up. They were speeding up.
Yeah. I have a hard time tracking those things. This is like those action sequences.
Well, it doesn't help that they were like, he was like, where are we? Are we at this place? Are we not? Are we in a new land? Like, how are you supposed to fucking track with
Yeah. So like, I can track the conversation, you know? I can track the thoughts, the interior monologues. But when it's things like this and I can't quite see it, I wonder if that's where I'm losing the thread.
Which happened to me in Lord of the Rings a lot. I was like, I don't know enough what a glade is as opposed to a fucking ridge, as opposed to a glen. Like, it's all kind of, you're like, oh, it's pretty. Or like, I don't know. So, which is a very, it's like a charlatan. Yeah, it's a very like, just not sensitive to the artistry at work. I actually feel like his descriptions of nature are quite beautiful. And they suddenly come out of nowhere and I'm like, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know when it was, like Otradno maybe, when Andrew arrived there. There was all this description of like, except for that big tree.
Oh yeah. The spring. And then,
Yeah.
and suddenly there's this nasty old tree.
Stop looking at me, Swan.
Yeah.
From around there, I was like, oh wow, he writes really beautifully. Just the things about like water and ice and leaves and just the like sort of natural world.
You know what I find takes me out of it too? Because I'm just thinking about the sleigh passage, and like maybe the point is you're supposed to be like exhilarated, like the characters are, by the sleigh ride. But what takes me out of it is I literally am just so confused about the number of servants and who they are. Because it's so foreign to me. I can't imagine this amount of wealth. And I don't know who everyone is, and so like I can't place people, and I think I'm distracted by that. And maybe if that weren't there, I could be with them. And I think I had some of the same things in the army because I don't know everyone's position. Don't know what it's. There is no like. It's just not normal for me. So I'm very disoriented. I'm probably focused on the wrong things. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like I'm very distracted by Natasha just like ordering people around in the house. I just saw her win.
Why do you think that's distracting?
Because I don't think the point is like. Maybe it is.
Why not?
Look how wealthy and like entitled these people are.
I'm not sure that's not the point.
Okay. All right.
Like, I don't know if that's a distraction or like that you're with whatever.
I don't know. Because Tolstoy was a count. Like that. This was his world. So I don't exactly know who he's writing for.
I mean, this could be his world, and he's still like. And clearly, like, a count doesn't necessarily mean anything. So, like, half the fucking countryside is prince and princess, and
apparently they're all wealthy.
No,
like this Illigan who we meet, and it's like, oh, he's him too.
Yeah, but he's the neighbor.
Even the person who were like, oh, uncle, so modest. He has servants too.
Yeah.
It's very. Very rich.
I mean, it's partly that they're very rich, but it's also like how an economy is constructed.
Yeah.
Like, if there is a large group of if the middle class is not super stout, because that's where it sounds like you're coming from like a stout middle class.
I guess so.
But if that's not the case, then you have like a much larger swath of like poor people in the society, and definitely in India where there's this like really screwed up. You know how you were saying your dad's the house that your parents bought was like much cheaper then.
Yeah.
If there's a little bit of that like I think based on the economics of the society, you might not have to be that rich to have servants.
Right. Okay.
Like it's not the same as having servants here and now today.
Yeah.
It's a different like.
And the Starks are all slaves, essentially, right?
I think so.
This is only, what is this? It's 18. It's 200 years ago. It's not actually that long ago.
What made you think of that?
It's just incredible how much can change.
It's not just time, it's culture.
Mhm.
It's places like this now.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know what Russia's like. But yeah, obviously there was like a revolution and shit, so a lot did change there.
Maybe tomorrow we will have costumes and maps and Instagram live.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Maybe.
Maybe.
You
maybe,
never know.
Maybe we'll be in even rougher shape. Who knows?
We could be in rougher shape.
Okay.